You're live. Okay, welcome to House Education on April 30th. The committee is continuing to take a look at S 313, which is a bill about career and technical education. The bill I have described as sort of having two major portions of it. One is some pretty significant work being asked of the Agency of Education. And I say the other part is a working group that was put together by our colleagues in House Commerce. So since much of this has to do with the Agency of Education being tasked with a fair amount of work, we have the secretary joining us, and we look forward to your testimony. I would sort of ask you, given our limited time, to the extent possible, kind of keep it focused on 313 specifically and much of the work that is being asked of the AOE and sort of your reaction to it.
Absolutely.
Great.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. For the record, I'm Zoe Saunders. I'm the Secretary of Education. I will share my screen to go through some slides that I did upload for you all. Just want to confirm. Can you see my screen?
Yep, and we have them. Yes.
And you have them. Okay, excellent.
You're not in slide mode though.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So to your point, I will breeze through the background knowledge, but did think it was important to document so that you had a context of the evolution of the bill. So for today's agenda, I'll reflect on the shared vision and intent. I will provide a very high level overview of the background on the AOE's Universal CTE Access proposal, and then move more into talking about the collaboration that we've had with the House Commerce Committee over this legislative session, and remaining feedback on the pieces of the bill that you are currently reviewing. So want to start, and this is always a wonderful place to start, is that we have shared vision and intent. So we absolutely share and support the committee's intent to provide universal access to CTE. S313 represents progress this session. It does recognize the existing challenges and the variability of CTE delivery, and it does call for a sense of urgency. However, it doesn't go so far as to actually put forward reform changes to funding or to governance. So we did present a comprehensive roadmap for achieving that collective vision for universal access to CTE, but we recognize that as we were working with House Commerce, the shift happened because of context of the outstanding questions that were happening in other committees. And so what this represents is an intention to continue to stay the course in prioritizing expanded access to career and technical education. It does include another study, as you have noted. We at the agency believe we're ready to move forward with efforts to modernize our CTE system because we have built many of these recommendations on prior studies. So just want to highlight what we all know, but just to reinforce, because I think centering these conversations around the why is greatly important. We know that there are challenges right now in accessing CTE, and that's largely tied to proximity to technical centers. We know we have inconsistent program quality and availability, that there are transportation barriers, and unfortunately, too many students miss early exposure to these opportunities. And so the vision as we move forward is to ensure that we can have consistency in offering high quality CTE experiences for all students so that it truly is universal access as opposed to being limited to a select few. All of these challenges have a through line as we think about variability in program quality and access across a relatively complex governance structure. We have 15 distinct regions with different governance structures under this funding system that's currently in place. So I will spend a little time on the vision. We want to make sure that every Vermont student is graduating ready for life after high school, and that every student, regardless of geography, can discover their strengths, that graduates are prepared, that learning is meaningful. And the way that we're really thinking about the vision for CTE is it's foundational. It's not an alternative option. It's actually embedded in how we deliver education, and it's blending pathways of rigorous academics and applied learning that are connected to career opportunities. We do share in the vision of long-term establishing the regional comprehensive high schools as well, and recognize that there needs to be a bridge to that work in ensuring that we can have high quality programming and training for the delivery of career and technical education within our current system. So timeline, just as a point of reflection, this vision has been built upon many years of study and engagement with the field and engagement with the General Assembly. We have actually conducted multiple studies to evaluate our CTE delivery model. We have clarity around the barriers, and we've put forward a number of recommendations to move forward in addressing our long-term vision. Most recently, the AOE submitted recommendations for statewide graduation requirements to the State Board of Education. Those requirements do place an emphasis on career and technical education and address some of the barriers for students to access CTE and for those credits to be counted. So, wanted just to note that there's already work underway to help on the quality side of creating that alignment. So the policy framework, you have this as a point of reference. What I just want to emphasize is that, we really are approaching this work in a holistic way and making sure that we're creating a coherent and integrated pre-K 12 delivery system. We know that governance and funding play an important role in that. And we recognize that there's a need to prepare the system for that transition to the future state. We did put forward a proposal for an education service agency. The intention here is to move to one single governance unit for CTE. As you know, in S313, that is not reflected in the language. That was largely a result of not understanding what was happening with other aspects of the education transformation, given that those decisions have not been made yet within committees around the movement to larger districts. But do want to put out there a reflection around how this type of a governance can really be supportive of ensuring that there's consistent quality and delivery and allowing us to be equitable in how we're evaluating and appropriating dollars across our state system. There were some specific questions around how this would be operationalized. So I just share this as a sample staffing matrix. Want you all and your committee to know that there's been a lot of intensive work behind this proposal that actually maps out what this could look like in terms of the structure, the model, the funding, that this could be viable. So want to make sure that that's contemplated as we think forward in terms of future changes. In terms of statewide financing for CTE, we have been continued to emphasize the importance of evaluating the cost of career and technical education as we move to a foundation formula. The governor's original proposal put forward a weighted model. We came forward with an alternate proposal this year with having a single line item appropriation. Our intention here is to demonstrate that there are different ways to fund CTE. We hope that those will be included in the study that JFO is conducting with their research partner, AIR. Our main intent here is just to ensure that we are prioritizing CTE, and we know budgets are an expression of priority. So we have brought forward this alternate approach, which really is, paying out CTE first as part of our intent for universal access and ensuring that it is fully resourced. That also is not included within the language you have, but do want you to have that in terms of context, because I think it's important as we think through the scope of future planning. We have done a lot of collaboration with the House Commerce Committee and appreciate their partnership. It truly has been productive. It has generated, I think, improvements and refinements to the plan over the last 2 years. But I do want to note that our conversation shifted when progress was stalled on governance reformed. And so because of that, and also that there's a pending study from JFO. So I think the outstanding items around governance and funding shifted the focus of the committee instead of making substantive changes to CTE this year, ensuring that there is a roadmap for doing so in alignment with the transformation. So to your point, Chair Conlon, around this bill represents a lot of work for the agency. We're actually very much supportive with the work that is outlined in the bill. It is aligned to our intent of the original proposal and also supportive of the agency's focus now and the work that's underway. We have established a college and career readiness director. That is a new position that we created under our reorganization, which we are currently recruiting for. And the intention of this role is to support that systems level alignment from pre-K to adult education. So we are really looking forward to having this additional layer of leadership. We also have recently completed a professional learning series with over 70 educators across the state of Vermont to understand the barriers and success factors for effective implementation of personalized learning plans. I annually receive assurances from superintendents, and we have 50% of our middle and high schools are actually implementing personalized learning plans. And within that, many would rate the level of applicability and relevance in different ways. And so when anything like that happens, it's important for us to think about why. So we had a really great engagement with many educators across the state and understanding, what is the research behind personalized learning plans? What are we trying to do? And how can we really think about some of the systemic ways in which we can remove barriers and ensure that in doing so, we're reimagining personalized learning plans. A lot of what's described in S313 in terms of supporting a career academic and career navigation system is very much in line with our thinking around this reimagining of personalized learning plans and also thinking through these approaches from pre-K to 12 and thinking about them as a touch point for students to create their own agency, for multiple educators to be involved in really helping the student to progress and to reach their goals. So a lot of what is written in terms of our responsibilities in the report outlined in S313 is very much an opportunity for us to reflect on work underway. So based on the professional learning series we conducted, we are piloting a new system of coordinated college and career supports, and that's based on input gathered from the PLP professional learning series. And again, that focus is on reimagining PLPs. We are doing this within the construct of our existing system and existing funding, but in a way that we believe is going to be enriching and helping us to advance the goals established in S313 and also to really be more impactful in the ways that we're implementing some of the key components of Act 77. We have submitted statewide graduation requirements, as I noted earlier. Those have an emphasis on CTE, and that does create a guidepost for us to create that coherent framework of content standards with embedded career focus. So all of the language that's included in S313 regarding the report that we must deliver as an agency is in keeping with the work underway and actually is reflective of some of the revisions that we suggested. Specifically, the revisions we suggested were to expand the focus not just on career, but also looking at this coherent system of academic and college integration across the system so that we're not doing a separate pathway, but we're really thinking intentionally about creating that coherent framework. So we are supportive of submitting that report and believe that it will be helpful in reflecting on the progress we're making and planning in this area. It will also help us to evaluate what additional statutory changes or resources may be needed in the future. So where we are in our current state in terms of status of the policy choices regarding quality, as you can see, we're moving forward in that direction. We are moving forward and really elevating the quality expectations through the statewide graduation requirements. Also want to note that we'll be moving to a statewide calendar that will help to support more coordinated professional learning across the state. And we're really eager and excited to be moving in that direction. In terms of governance, as this committee is well aware, those policy choices are still outstanding. And funding, while we have a clear framework within Act 73, the final cost of the funding and specific to how we will actually resource CTE has yet to be finalized. That is part of the JFO study. That JFO study is contingent on larger districts. It's assuming that the funding will operate within larger districts. As I've shared earlier, we've provided two ways in which to approach CTE funding either as a weight or as an appropriation. So we hope that AIR, through their study, will evaluate the best path forward when they release their findings in December of 2026. So in terms of the specific feedback, the House Commerce Committee incorporated much of our feedback on their draft and appreciate that. It does definitely represent a level of collaboration that's valuable. And, we are disappointed it doesn't make decisions around governance and funding, but it does maintain momentum. It allows us within the report to come back next session and update the legislature on the work underway and accompany that with detailed recommendations for further decision making. Regarding Section 8 of S313, we don't recommend another working group. As I've noted, there have been a number of studies around CTE. I think we're really clear around the barriers and the opportunities moving forward. We have some skepticism that another working group will produce different results. However, if a working group is established and it continues to be included in the bill language, we would request additional membership and that be expanded to include content experts and specifically have an AOE representative, a representative from the Vermont Department of Labor, a CTE director, and a superintendent. We believe that these content experts bring important perspective to really evaluate the feasibility and implementability of these legislative changes being proposed. And these are resources and past testimony just for your reference and context.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm looking at sort of the work that is being asked of the AOE in this. Your testimony seems to say, yes, we support what is being asked of us. Some of it, I think it was described to us as kind of a mix of BACTED language and AOE language that we have in here. So I just want to talk about some of the details, just get an understanding. So like there's I don't know if you have it in front of you, but page 7 of at the top of that there's a fair bit about dispute resolution. And I don't think that was an AOE proposal. But I certainly have no objections to it being studied, but it talks about, formal enforcement, things that don't frankly exist. And I just didn't know sort of the level of interest of the AOE in addressing that issue as well. Some of this is like the laws are clear, but people aren't following them. I don't really know what you do about that.
Yeah, I think our thought, and this is, I'm going to bring up, make sure that I have the most recent legislation that hasn't been. Which section is that in?
Section 5 and subsection 2 of that.
And is that where it enumerates the responsibilities for us to deliver on the report, the components?
No, this is like, that the AOE shall submit a written report, yes, including recommendations for the following: a pre-enforcement intervention pathway that is responsible for supporting interpretation and implementation of CTE rules and statute, and providing early stage mediation between CTE centers and sending districts. Documenting patterns of non-compliance and escalating unresolved and repeated issues for formal enforcement.
Yeah. I think that particular language becomes extraneous when we move towards our statewide graduation requirements, where we have clarity around how the credits will be honored, and when we update the state board rules. I think the House Commerce question was, how do we ensure that there is fidelity of implementation of these rules within the transition period to the statewide graduation requirements? Our intent within the report would be to document what the current practices are and the ways in which we can help to, provide additional oversight or clarity around that. But I think it's important to note that I don't think that that is necessarily most impactful to what the study needs to accomplish, but we're certainly willing to reflect back on the current process and collect any additional input that may be needed to surface solutions for the future. But we think largely much of this will be solved with the work around moving to the statewide graduation requirements and the modernization of the state board rules.
Okay. Then a little farther down talks about recommendations for a statewide framework for career navigation consistent with statute, including grade level competency standards for students in pre-kindergarten through grade 12 related to career exploration and planning that are designed to ensure that each student develops the knowledge skills necessary to graduate with a clear, actionable, and adaptable plan for career and educational next steps. I think there was some confusion in the committee, like what's a grade level competency? What is a standard? So if you could talk about that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about the college and career navigation, we are looking at this holistically to build coherence in the pre-K 12 system and recognizing that there's different levels of age appropriate introduction of college and career readiness skills. And we requested that this particular item be included as part of the broader work we're doing as we're really strengthening an understanding of those grade level standards in the whole system. When we look at our core content areas and embedding the college and career readiness competencies within that framework. So it's work that the agency's curriculum and instruction team is engaged in, and we feel comfortable about providing a framework around what should be included. And likely our report will provide some recommendations around what the training will look like as we move forward, and also the criteria for selecting and evaluating the efficacy of curriculum and high quality instructional materials.
So grade level competency standards are something that the AOE generates.
Yes.
And is not part of EQS necessarily.
So I think as part of this, it's making sure that we have a clear alignment within EQS. That would be part of the report as well, to understand if there might be a need to provide any clarification around the EQS standards. The report would be largely presenting that framework. Likely there would be the state board involvement as well within anything adopted within standards or education quality.
Representative Long has a question.
Quickly following on that, would that also apply to independent schools as well? It doesn't mention about independent schools in here, right? Just the grade level competency and standards.
Yeah, so all of our students that are within approved independent schools are required to participate in our state assessment. Our state assessment is aligned to our standards. So when we think about a coherent system, we would want to make sure that there's clarity around what we are measuring in terms of school quality. So for any of our students that would be held accountable to the quality expectations within the state of Vermont, there would need to be, an explicit understanding of what students should be able to learn and be able to do at each grade level in order to achieve that quality expectation.
Moving on to section 7, which is mainly just word changes from grades to credits or proficiencies, or adding the word proficiencies. But it does have, just one substantive change. We're saying the school board of a high school from which a student wishes to graduate shall apply credits or proficiencies earned for a career technical education program approved by the state board toward graduation requirements. I don't really have a problem with the concept here. I'm just wondering, is this language that could wait until graduation requirements were sort of formalized and in place?
Yeah. That's exactly right. I think what we see here is there's a challenge of timing because we're currently operating within a system of locally derived graduation requirements. We know that there are some challenges with those credits being appropriately honored across sending schools, but that's not something that can be fixed in the absence of the statewide graduation requirements. So there's really no other way to fix the system. Like, we're on the path to fixing the system, and I think you're right. I think there's a timing challenge with requiring that within the next 2 years.
Great, thank you. I think we're up to, let's see, as I look through it, the task force, which is certainly something we are also debating here as to whether it's necessary.
Right. So we advised against the task force to the committee. I think for much of the same reason that you have discussed, and we've heard testimony from other, you know, uh, associations in Vermont. We've really studied the issue around CTE access. I think the outstanding policy choices around funding and governance are largely what's holding us back from moving forward with the reform efforts to ensure universal access to CTE. So we, are skeptical about the value of another working group, and I think would ask that there be more clarity in terms of the specific um, options that they would be evaluating. It's a broad scope of work that's put on that working group. And I would want to make sure that the recommendations coming out of that group are really helping us to advance, but am concerned that they will still be contending with the fact that there are outstanding policy choices around governance and funding that will limit their ability to make recommendations that are different or unique from what we've already been able to analyze and report.
I think it was also described to us as their job is to really figure out what the bridge governance is between where we are today and where we might be in the future.
Yeah.
And I think the higher motivation here was really to just make sure CTE remained very relevant in the future discussions.
Right.
I guess I would say, I'm not sure if a task force is necessary for that.
Yeah. I mean, we very much support maintaining a focus on CTE and like the framing of this broader career navigation and the focus on pre-K 12. I think the work that's underway is going to be helpful. And again, we advised against a working group. We just didn't see that would substantively advance the planning around CTE. However, if the committee decides and the legislature decides to keep the committee, I think it's really important that content experts are involved in the discussion so they can surface the realities on the ground for any solutions that are contemplated.
Yeah, I think that sort of another motivation for it, or what it's a symptom of, is just what a challenge it is to sort of, without creating huge disruption, how to create the CTE governance from what is currently a really confusing, disparate set of governance models, and trying to reach consensus on that.
Right.
But to your point, it has been pretty well studied.
Yes, it really has been studied. What we brought forward this session was intended to support with that transition and recognizing that there's many changes that need to happen, moving to larger districts, in the future also building new schools. But we know right now we want all students to have access to high quality career and technical education. And that's why we proposed the Education Service Agency to be that governance entity that can push in to districts and to schools to provide that consistent training and also allow us to pool resources such as Perkins dollars in ways to be more equitable of making investments across CTE centers and maybe building out lab space in, for example, high schools and middle schools that might be able to have open classrooms. Also kind of opening our thinking that it doesn't require for every program to have a really extensive lab space, that we can be delivering much of this programming in middle schools and in 9th and 10th grade high schools that aren't attached to CTE Center. So the intention really with the Education Service Agency was to act as that bridge to really deliver on the urgency of improving the quality and consistency of career and technical education by ensuring that there was that level of expertise across the state that could be deployed and support training and coherence of the entire system. And what we had talked about is at such time, there might be a conversation around whether we continue with the Education Service Agency as the model of delivering career and technical education, or we evaluate, having that embedded within districts. The question really comes down to scale and ensuring that districts are operating at the level of scale to be able to have that quality and consistency of impact across the state.
I've been dominating questions here. Anything else from anybody? All right, great. Thank you very much for your time today, Secretary Saunders. Really appreciate the follow-up and the focus specifically on the bill. And just to confirm, you are supportive of all of the work that is laid out here that is assigned to the AOE.
The work that is laid out in terms of what is enumerated within the study, is that what you're specific?
Yeah.
So there are pieces that we will have questions around whether they're implementable now that can be reflected in the study. So and you've noted a couple of those items where we can reflect back where some of the barriers might be in the short term or the long term. But we're comfortable addressing all of those items.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.
All right, people can go off live. We are